I just disagreed with her philosophy. She started backing perhaps the worst Republican congressman in our history, just stupid person named Massie. And I said, go your own way. And once I left her, she resigned because she would never have survived a primary. But I think she's a nice person.
US Congresswoman Marjorie Traitor Brown has announced she's resigning from Congress. Ms. Greene posted on social media about her resignation from the US House of Representatives, saying she will leave office on the 5th of January next year.
I do not want my sweet district to have to endure a hurtful and hateful primary against me by the president that we all fought for. I believe in term limits and do not think Congress should be a lifelong career or an assisted living facility.
The announcement comes just a few days after she locked horns with US President Donald Trump over the release of files related to the late pedophile Jeffrey Epstein.
Standing up for American women who were raped at 14 years old, trafficked and used by rich, powerful men should not result in me being called a traitor and threatened by the President of the United States, whom I fought for.
She also used the opportunity to take shots at the Republican Party.
If I am cast aside by the president and the MAGA political machine and replaced by neocons, big pharma, big tech, military-industrial war complex, foreign leaders, and the elite donor class that can never ever relate to real Americans, then many common Americans have been cast aside and replaced as well.
Donald Trump claims Marjorie Taylor Greene's shock resignation is great news for the country. Posting on Truth Social, the US president wrote, Marjorie Traitor Brown, because of plummeting poll numbers and not wanting to face a primary challenger with a strong Trump endorsement, where she would have no chance of winning, has decided to call it quits. Nevertheless, I will always appreciate Marjorie and thank her for her service to our country. The US Congresswoman surprised many observers by announcing her resignation from the US House of Representatives, saying she will leave office on the 5th of January next year.
A crack has emerged within the MAGA movement after the resignation of Republican Congresswoman and former Trump ally Marjorie Taylor Greene. Joining us live from the United States is our analyst Michael Ware for this and more. Good to see you, Michael. Thanks for your time. So, Marjorie Taylor Greene, she's not a central player in the grand scheme of things, but she did tick a lot of MAGA boxes. Epstein, military interventionism, which is growing. But are the cracks there?
Well, isn't that the great question here about Marjorie Taylor Greene's announcement this morning that not only is she not seeking re-election in the House, but she's not going to run for president in the next cycle? I'd put a question mark or an asterisk on that one. Look, Marjorie Taylor Greene is really a canary down the mine. She wasn't just MAGA, she was a MAGA flag bearer. She loved President Trump and President Trump loved her. But what she symbolizes is that within this incoherent thing that is the MAGA movement, there are certain core principles that President Trump doesn't necessarily align with, especially now that he's in office. And she represents those core principles. At the top of that list of principles was releasing the full Epstein files. In many ways, she was pivotal to forcing Donald Trump to do an about course, a complete reversal, and agree to sign the bill if presented to him to release the full Epstein files. But as you touch upon, it's military interventionism and other things. She also represents the MAGA drive for affordability, which President Trump in all the polling is completely underwater on. He's losing big time on the economy. He's even losing on immigration, and she was a huge proponent for immigration reform. So on some of these core MAGA principles, President Trump is getting smacked about in the polls. Marjorie Traitor Brown stood up to him very publicly, more so than any other MAGA stalwart has, and she won on the issue, the Epstein files, but perhaps she's lost out overall because President Trump said, I'm not going to support your renomination and I'll back someone who's going to run against you. And she seems to have crumpled in the face of President Trump's might within the MAGA movement.
So more broadly, Michael, I mean, year 2 of term 2 is upon us, and as one congressman said overnight, Trump is still the biggest dog in the pound. But I mean, this comes for everyone. I know Trump is different gravy, but are we approaching lame duck status soon?
It's funny you mention that because that term is being thrown around, that President Trump may become a lame duck president. Because if you believe the polling and the political currents right now, the Republican Party, led by President Trump, is coming up for a shellacking in the midterms in about a year. And so that's when he'd become a lame duck. If he lost the House and can't control the Senate or loses the Senate, President Trump is completely powerless. So yes, the possibility that President Trump could become a lame duck is actually being spoken of here in the United States. And like I said, his polling is so underwater, a snorkel wouldn't help him right now. And that's a crisis he and the party have to address before the midterms.
So at what point, and maybe we're seeing this now with Marjorie Traitor Brown, at what point do the loyalists fracture and then conspire as they jockey for their own futures?
Yeah, well, only time will tell, because the great question is, if you're a MAGA member of the House of Representatives on a 2-year term, are you more fearful of the president or are you more fearful of the MAGA base? Because, Trump may disown you or he may support you, but what's first and foremost in your mind as a candidate is getting the votes extracted yet again from the MAGA base. And the MAGA base no longer exactly aligns with President Trump's principles or his agenda. I'm telling you, even MAGA voters are leaving him, if you can believe the polls.